The event attracted the cream of academia from across Africa, from industrialists and economists hoping to understand how business schools can constructively contribute to economic development.
What we really try to achieve is to raise the quality of the business education in Africa and to make it even more relevant. I mean, different than other parts of the world, we don't have the luxury just to talk about the theory of management. We really have to train managers in order to make a difference out there in the real world.
Relevance of the education curriculum across institutions of higher learning in Africa to the way business is conducted were topics of key concern.
The education sector is working on an archaic system, an outdated system. The education curricula was designed in those colonial days and has not adapted or evolved fast enough for what the private sector today demands. So you have thousands of kids being churned out of these universities and being unleashed to an unsuspecting private sector. We expect them to be IT smart, we expect them to have management skills, but when they come to the job market, there's a huge disconnect. They just are not ready. And so we have a huge gap.
Business schools traditionally have had a focus on being scientifically correct and research-driven, whatever, which is important. But I think we really can make a difference in business, like in the medical sciences and like in law, is to make a difference in society. All business schools don't necessarily yet have that focus. But it is one of the purposes of this association to really support business schools to move to be at the same time of good quality, but to be able to make a difference in society, to make a difference in company.
Universities, on the other hand, feel that employers, be it the government or private sector, should harmoniously interact with the schools for them to better understand their needs.
When we graduate a student from most institutions, especially in the management area, which I am concerned, that same students, though graduating with a good mark from the campus, the company will have to spend just about as much in training for that person to be inserted into the institution. So you are right. And the reason is very simple, that industry has never really entered the academia. Industry has never really participated in the building of the institutions which generate the very products that it is hoping to get. So somehow, by sitting out there in the market and the education is sitting far wide away from the industry, there's a huge disconnect.
In the past, the private sector and the public sector were not working together. They were suspicious of one another. The government wants to tax you, and the private sector says, you're hiding something, we want to get something. So we've had to build a bridge. Now there is trust. We get the attention of government at the highest level. They seek our input at every level, at every major decision. We are now working together in concert. There is congruence, and that's very important.
Inter-university, government and private sector collaborations through meetings such as these are gradually changing the landscape and caliber of graduates getting into the job market.
We at the Association of African Business Schools need industry collaboration, because if you collaborate with us, then we can know how to train our students better and we can make them do projects to improve the very businesses. So we can bring our MBA students to apply their theory, and they can learn from you how to be practical about their theory.
Despite these setbacks, there's a silver lining to turn around the effectiveness of the education system where entrepreneurship is a key focus.
One big trend that we see, and I think, and I hope we see more, is to work much more on the incubation of companies, on learning while doing action learning, so that students not only get the necessary knowledge, but at the same time create companies and jobs and therefore contribute to the economic development. That's a trend that is more and more seen these days in the good business schools in Africa.
Most of the innovation, most of the patents, most of the intellectual property rights in most of the globe, 80% comes from universities. So we are doing a bad job about it in Africa here, and especially in our country, Kenya. We have simply left the entire innovation capacity development in our universities to public institutions and private institutions that have no financial support. How they will manage to get people who are capable of commoditizing a good research concept, I don't know. But somehow industry and government have to merge in understanding how will they fund these centers of research and innovation. The second area that is fundamental is that incubation builds businesses and markets. I'm happy to say here at Strathmore Business School we have over 100 companies that are being incubated. a number of them already in active business. This means we are generating productivity in the country. Those people most likely will be entrepreneurs in their own rights. But if they're not going to be entrepreneurs, then when they go into the business world, they can participate better because they understand the market, the product, the process, and organization far better.
As Africa positions itself as an investment hub, upgrading and creating relevant institutions of higher learning which keep up with the changing business environment will be critical in fast-tracking development.
They must work together. We must build a bridge where the private sector is engaged actively with institutions like the universities, these business schools. And we are working in collaboration so that the product they turn out is what we expect, will meet our expectations, and will raise the bar. Otherwise, we cannot have transformation of our economies. Nearly every African country today is talking about private sector-led growth. This will not happen. Most African countries, the government is too big, it's too heavy, and the private sector is a small part. So it's like they're paying lip service. But the challenge is for us also in the private sector to grow our part, to take on that responsibility, because it's the private sector that pays the taxes, the private sector that will create the jobs, the much needed employment, especially for the